to Bibliorex, where we rant about Lord of the Rings and that bitch, Lobelia Sackfield Baggins, and Peter Jackson, that fuck up.
Well, now you stole my thunder. I'm Bugs.
And I'm Bam Bam. And we're going over The Hobbit today.
Yeah.
Okay, so the book, dare I say, above reproach?
Pretty much. I love the book.
Yeah, I don't know that you can really convince anybody that the book is bad.
No.
But the Hobbit movies that
oh my God.
Peter Jackson did, we're gonna be riding those pretty hard today, I feel.
Yeah,
So you're a purist. I watched the movies before I read the book.
Just traitor. How could you? Bastard.
So you're pretty hateful towards the Hobbit movies. Rightfully so, I would say.
I read The Hobbit before I read The Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I read them when I was, I think, 11, almost 12.
More or less the target audience.
Yes. I loved The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. I adored it. And if you go back and you find out how The Hobbit came about, Tolkien was telling his story out loud to his son. Mm-hmm. And he was telling the story of The Hobbit to his child, and this was back in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah, which makes sense because a lot of the times the story will take a second and be like, oh, well, you probably already knew this, or something like that. You're very clever, but remember, Bilbo was about to get eaten, and he was a little stressed.
Yes. You'll think of this clever response, but Bilbo was not as clever as you, sitting comfortably in your home next to the fire.
Yeah.
And if you read it with the thought of this was spoken out loud and this was spoken to a child, it's perfect. It is witty. It is funny. It is really fun.
A good way to engage with a kid's imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he exaggerates the aspect of greed in the dwarves.
Yeah.
He highlights how silly the elves are. He wants you to root for Bilbo. Bilbo is our hero, and he is small, probably similar in size to the child listening to the story.
Half the height of a man.
And who's clever and quiet and unnoticed, and people really don't think of him as important or special. Probably the same way the child feels in the world of grown-ups.
The way children were definitely treated more so back in the 20s, 30s? When was
30s, 40s, yeah. Because he wrote it after World War I.
Right, okay.
And some people believe that The Lord of the Rings is kind of based on World War I. And it definitely reflects his own personal experience fighting in World War I.
Which I think in public he would disagree with that, but I think it was Robert Evans was talking about that. He actually fought in this awful battle where a lot of his comrades drowned in a lake, and then you've got the scene where Frodo and Samwise are going across where all those bodies are in the water, but supposedly JRR didn't like for people to infer in that way.
And he also used all of his English literature knowledge, his historical knowledge of, European legends and older stories. He used those to develop his world of Middle-earth.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these things are based in his personal experience. And I feel like what makes it's such great literature is he is making a character. It's Bilbo in The Hobbit. It's Frodo and Sam in Lord of the Rings. These are everyman characters who are not special. He has special people in them. He has Aragorn. He has Thorin. He has great heroes. But our person that we deeply care about is an ordinary person. He's a hobbit. He's not special. He's tiny,
someone
quiet,
who feels
and able
diminutive in the world, like a lot of us do.
And I feel like Peter Jackson loses the the perspective that this story is meant to exemplify the honor and bravery of ordinary men.
Right.
He turns it into a superhero movie and focuses on the heroes and the kings to the detriment of how simple and noble an ordinary person can be.
And that's just in The Lord of the Rings. In The Hobbit, that's dialed up to 11.
Yes.
Especially with Legolas. I hate what they've done to Legolas. He's just this leaping battle freak, and
who hates dwarves more. And okay,
that's also like super exaggerated, because in The Hobbit it's not. That's also dialed up to 11 because it's just a mild general
disagreement. It's like, well, we don't like you because we disagreed with you, but we'll help you.
And you make fun of our beards.
Food. Here's wine. We'll help you. We just don't agree with what you're doing.
Right.
In the movie, it's, we're going to lock you
Race
up.
war.
Race war. We're going to fight you. And that part made me really, really frustrated that they had to heighten disagreement to create more plot to make this last frickin' 7.5 fucking hours.
So let's follow through like the basic plot line. So we start with Bilbo, that perfect intro.
There once was a hobbit who lived in a hole.
But not a dirty,
not a nasty, dirty.
And Bilbo is just living like a perfect, idyllic country bumpkin life. And
he doesn't work. He is part of the gentry.
Yeah.
So he has money. But it is this idealized country gentleman. Other people do the gardening. And he's able to go and buy all the cheeses and sausages he wants.
Right.
But nobody around him is really in servitude. There's really no servants or slaves. Everyone just kind of does their job, and it just
works out well for
everyone,
especially Bilbo. But everyone's more or less happy.
Yes. Like, that is kind of this idealized, everyone's happy, everyone has their job, everyone has their place. And Bilbo's place is reading and eating and hosting teas and going on little walks in the world, and he is content in his life.
Which I feel like it's almost like the way a kid remembers his young life, probably. Like maybe that's what JRR was shooting for. So, but
and it's possible that was his fantasy as an adult.
Maybe he grew up in the English
or
countryside.
these other places. As if I could return to this ideal life of ease and comfort in the country, this is what it would look like.
Yeah. Which is really nice. There's such a cozy feeling that you get from that you can't really get from anywhere else.
Yeah.
And, like, not even from Lord of the Rings. Like, you get a little bit of it, but just a Bilbo at home smoking his pipe. It's just unmentionably cozy.
Yes, it is very sweet.
And then Gandalf shows up. And so in the Hobbit movie, I feel like it followed much more closely with the books.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
And especially with Gandalf's lines, and it's almost like verbatim.
Except for the sidetrack where we go see this other war and dwarves and elves.
Oh, I just meant like this first little intro to Gandalf to Bilbo.
Yeah, I mean they do the meeting of the Hobbit and Gandalf and the dwarves at the beginning of the movie follows very closely the book.
Yeah. How did you feel about the bend the knives and bend the forks and blunt the knives song?
I was surprised that they had the dwarves sing and allowed them to kind of have that playfulness that was in the book, because in The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson destroyed any playing, silliness, lightheartedness that was in the books at all. And I felt like, oh, okay, so we are allowing the dwarves to be silly and tormenting Bilbo, and Bilbo is doing a very good job of being, oh my goodness gracious me, good
Just
morning.
pearl clutching the entire time.
And I thought that was amusing and cute.
Yeah.
My kid enjoyed it.
Yeah. I feel torn about the song. I almost wished it hadn't been included. Like, I feel like they should have leaned either more into it or further away from it.
Like, it wasn't quite enough.
I feel like the song was too Disney. Because I feel like, especially like contextually back in the time before like regular TV and stuff like that, people just did like silly songs and stuff like that. Like they kind of just ad-libbed that, I feel like, is the way it was supposed to be presented.
Right.
And like the
Not
songs...
a song and dance routine.
Right.
Right.
Because there's no reasonable way that they could have done it the way they did in the movie unless they had it ready and choreographed.
Yeah.
So, that
whereas
just kind
in the
of...
book, it's written as an ad lib. Haha, we're making fun of this guy.
Yeah, and it's like one person says a line, then another person thinks of something clever. They say a line, and it's just a little bit more fun and believable. And that's just the way, like the silliness of the elves is presented as well, because they do a bunch of songs like that, like throughout the entire book. Yeah.
Yes, and it is very much that ad lib. Oh, haha, Dory is fat, you know, Bomber is asleep, haha.
Yeah.
And
Bilbo's not a good thief yet.
we can't spend our entire hour talking
Yeah,
about the beginning of the movie. Let's do a very, very, very fast breakdown of the book.
Okay. I'll let you lead on this because I feel like you're going to
I'll try
have
to be
more
succinct.
sticking points.
What happened is Thorin is the son of a king of the dwarves, and he wants to gather a group of people to help him go back east to the Lonely Mountain to regain his grandfather's kingdom that belonged to the dwarves. The Lonely Mountain is a fortress that the dwarves had, and it's full of gold and treasure. And that 60 years ago, Smaug, the great dragon, had come in, chased away his people, and taken the mountain for himself. Gandalf knows that Thorin wants to do this adventure, and so he's helping Thorin gather the people for this adventure to go take back the Lonely Mountain.
Including a sneaky little thief.
He needs a burglar, which they say burglar a lot more in the book than in the movie. They don't call him their little burglar.
Yeah, it's almost a more set profession. In kind
of like a hero.
Yeah.
They were looking for a hero, couldn't afford one, so they'll take a burglar.
Yeah. I think that's just the class that they picked for this character, like a D&D character.
Yes. One of the big key differences is in the book, Thorin doesn't really have a plan for how they're going to deal with the dragon. They're kind of hoping the dragon is just dead.
Yeah, because nobody's seen him
and
for
that's
a
why
while.
they're taking a burglar to help them steal back some of his stuff, and that's as far as Thorin has planned. They're not really planning on regaining his grandfather's kingdom in a political way.
Yeah.
This is more, I want my stuff back. And he's very, all the gold, gold. And they sing songs of gold.
Which in the book, he's more of a goober. He's just more like just a dwarf.
He's just a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, he's a blue-blooded goober, but he's still just a goober. And in the movie, he's not allowed to look like any kind of silly or anything like that. Originally in the book, he was in the pile of dwarfs that fell through the door.
Yes.
And they specifically took that out. They let Gandalf look like a dork instead of Thorin, and I feel like that means something.
Thorin has to be held up as a king, and he is much more elf-like in the movies, where he is stiff upper lip, stern, harsh, kingly. And in the book, he is important, but he's not different.
Yeah.
He's not special. And they really set him aside and make him special.
Yeah.
He has to be special
in the book,
in the movie.
In the book, he had a haughtiness to it, a high-class haughtiness to him.
Yes, and it's him being snooty. It's not, we're setting him on a pedestal.
Right. So...
Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me get through the book synopsis.
Well, I was going to get into the next part.
Oh, okay.
So they hire Bilbo on, much to his dislike, and they set out on a long and dangerous journey. They face a bunch of challenges along the way: idiot trolls, goblins, talking spiders, giant wolves called wargs.
They get stuck in Mirkwood.
And they meet some dickhead Aryan elves in the movie. They're just a bunch of blue-eyed, blonde, sharp-eared automatons.
Yeah.
And they're much sillier in the book.
They're called dark elves because they like to be out at nighttime.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yes, they're dark elves because they enjoy the stars in the nighttime. They don't enjoy the sun. And they live deep in the dark woods because they have extremely keen eyesight. They can see at nighttime.
That's so strange.
Whereas the light elves live on the coast and out in the sunlight, and they enjoy high towers and the sunshine, and they more worship the sun and the daytime aspects of the world. And so they're a different type of elf. They do like interbreed and intermarry, but they are two distinct types of elves.
Right.
And you don't get that distinctness at all.
That's so weird.
because Peter Jackson doesn't care.
Right. But that's so weird because other types of media that have like dark elves or something like that, they're usually like white-haired, black skin, like coal black.
Oh, nah.
And that
It had to do with their culture.
right. That makes more sense, and that's less race war-y, which I'm
Yeah.
happy about.
No. And that was also they're considered stupid by their light elf counterparts.
Yeah.
And it's more of a oh, we don't like them because they're different than us.
Yeah.
But they're not, like, their poetry is considered less high-minded. They're more silly, and that's where you do see it in the book. They're more slapstick versus Shakespeare.
Right.
And it's more of the high-class elves or the light elves, and they're more of the not dumb because you don't have dumb elves, but
Well, I
they're
feel like
more lower class.
the dark elves are more pragmatic as a culture, maybe, because I know the king is like a little more obsessed with like silver and jewels and stuff like that. So yeah, they also meet shape-shifting bear man.
Beorn.
Yeah, Beorn, the plot eagles, which I feel like were done infinitely better in the books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was like almost. I won't. Okay.
Basically, the idea is that this is a classic hero's journey. You have a reluctant hero. He goes through these adventures. Over time, his fellows gain respect for him. He's able to show them he does know how to do these things. He goes from being terrified and squeaking to stronger and more confident in himself. He gains a sword. He gains a magic ring. He becomes vital to their company, to the point where they're like, oh, wow, without him, what will we do? What will we do? Bilbo, help us solve this problem.
And further to the point where he's actually pushing back against the group of these haughty dwarves and like trying to lead them toward a better way instead of the bullheaded way.
He becomes the leader of the group because he's clever.
Yeah, he's like the moral center.
Yes.
Is what he eventually becomes.
And he becomes their thinker. He is the one who thinks through things, and it takes him a while.
Right.
But like when they get lost in Mirkwood, they leave the path, which they were warned not to. Everyone is running around going crazy. They get captured by elves. And he wanders around this elf hold for weeks trying to figure out what to do. He finds out that there is a way to get to the river, and he finds empty barrels. So he's like, oh, if I stick all the dwarves in these barrels and then they're thrown in the river, we can get downriver and escape. And so that's kind of like the diversion. And to me, that's kind of like one of the hinge points in the book, because this is where we really show Bilbo is the leader of the group, and he went from being more silly, being more scared, to being the leader. They're asking him, what are we going to do? How are you going to solve this problem?
Right.
And even Thorin is like, oh, thank you. You're coming up with these good plans, because even Thorin was thinking about giving in and blah, blah, blah. They use that to get to the lake, which is below the Lonely Mountain. And then they get help from the men in the lake town.
The master.
To give them provisions, weapons, food, all the things they need. And then they get to the Lonely Mountain.
Yeah.
And that is where you have the climax, and you have the end of the story, and you have the height of the hero's arc, and it kind of shifts from Bilbo being the complete center, and you start having diverse points of view. But up to that point, just about every chapter is from Bilbo's point of view.
Yeah.
You don't leave his perspective to go follow other people's stories. At that point, you kind of do, because we need to know what's going on in Lake Town. We need to know what was going on with Gandalf.
Yeah.
We need to go, we need to follow Thorin when he's doing his thing and Bilbo when he's doing this thing.
Tidying up loose strings so that
Yes.
you don't think that they just wrecked through shit
Right.
and we're never going to go back and check on any of the stuff that happened.
Right.
Or other characters you might have liked along the way or something like that. Because that's something a little kid would probably ask, well, what happened to X? Or
And you can kind of tell where it's like, oh, you must be wondering what Gandalf was doing all this time. So I can just imagine a little kid saying, but what about Gandalf? And he's off doing this other thing down here. So this is the point where they realize the dragon is still there. Bilbo goes down and steals a golden cup.
Yep.
The dragons are super excited, and then the dragon gets mad, and then they blame Bilbo for making the dragon mad. And the dragon takes off and goes and lays waste to the lake town.
and gets killed by a bard with a black
Arrow.
arrow.
It was his lucky arrow. It
Right.
wasn't a special iron thing like in the movie. It was
Yeah.
just his personal lucky arrow. And he's able to shoot the part under his wing that wasn't
Missing
protected.
a scale.
It was like missing a scale. It was, and Bilbo had seen it and talked about it. And one of the ravens there, I don't know, there's special birds at the end of the book.
There was oh shoot. I can't remember there was one specific kind of bird and then just a raven that could talk.
They could talk to each other. So at this point, the dwarves and Bilbo don't know the dragon's dead. And they're hiding and they're scared.
Yeah.
And then there's like, well, there's no dragon. So they go around and they're like, aha, this is all our stuff now. Because they didn't have a plan for how to kill the dragon.
Right.
And they're like, free gold. Yay, we have the gold. So they fortify their front door and they're like, we have all this gold. Haha. And then they're like, yeah, but everyone else is going to realize the dragon isn't here either. They're going to come here and try to take the gold too. The people down at the lake town are like,
Our entire town
our shit
is
got wrecked. This dragon destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Those people that we gave all this stuff to, they owe us. And so they all come up and want to talk to Thorin and say, you need to pay us back for wrecking our town. And he's like, I didn't tell you that.
With a small army of elves behind them.
And those are the elves from Mirkwood because they're owed gold from that too because they
Right.
hosted the dwarves for weeks.
Yeah.
And basically they have a standoff. They're all frustrated and angry. And then these goblins are...
Led by Bolg, Azog's son. I don't know if he's Azog's son in the book.
And it's not, we want revenge on the dwarfs so much. Well, I think it is because they killed the...
Yeah, that was because of the mine.
They killed the Goblin King under the mountain, and then like his little lieutenant or whatever was coming down, and they were going to chase him down.
Yeah, I think there was also like a mention of like wars over the mines of Moria or something like that. Maybe I seem to recall something about that. I could be misremembering though.
Thorin is able to call his cousin Dane, who comes with an army of dwarves. The elves from Mirkwood are here to fight. The men are there to fight. And then we have the goblins, and then we have
Men, elves, eagles.
dwarves and goblins, yeah. Because in the book, the eagles are considered an army. That's why it's a battle of 5 armies.
Right.
And everyone kind of just converges on the Lonely Mountain and have a big fight. And everyone wants control of the mountain because it is now without smog there. It is going to be, it's full of
Big
wealth.
resource.
But
yeah.
it's also the center of like all of these access to the north, access to the west, access to the east.
Kind
like
of a
it's
big
kind of
trade
a hub.
hub.
It had been a huge trade hub and a very valuable spot in the world.
Yeah.
And with it returning to control of either men or elves or dwarves, that other town nearby can grow
Anyone
again.
but a big fucking dragon.
Yeah. They'll be able to regrow because it had been full of farms and vineyards and orchards and had been this really green, luscious land, and they want to return that. And then the goblins are like, well, if we can corner this area, we can take over all of this and just eat and take everything.
Yeah, because in this lore, they actually have like their own cities and stuff, which I don't know that they have that in the movies. Like they've just got like
Not
big.
really. They're not considered. They're just brutish monsters.
Yeah, they just got like sort of like villages where they just have racks of meat and fires everywhere.
Yeah, and in the books, they are more like organized politically, and they have their own political motivation.
Yeah.
And so there's a great big battle. The King of the Eagles is an actual character in the books, and he talks to people.
Right, and he becomes the king of all birds.
Because of helping at this battle, and they crown him with a golden crown.
I thought that was so funny. Like, not only is he the king of the eagles, he's the king of all the birds.
Yep, no, and they're freaking huge.
Yeah.
Bilbo gets knocked out, and he has his ring on, so they almost don't find him. They find him, he comes to, he's able to go talk to Thorin, and they
As he
make
lays
up.
dying.
Because Thorin's dying, and they had a falling out because Bilbo took the Arkenstone to trade with the men so that they would stop fighting. And if they traded the Arkenstone back to Thorin, he would give them the share of the gold that they were owed.
Right.
So Bilbo is giving up his 14th share of all of the treasure to make
For the sake of
peace.
peace, yeah.
And Thorin was just being a bastard and greedy about it. But Gandalf is like noticing. He's there and he just notices how selfless Bilbo is being. Because Bilbo's like, I don't want treasure. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
I just want to go home and sleep
Same.
in my bed.
I totally get it.
And so they're able to make peace. Philly and Killy die. Thorin dies and is buried with Arkenstone under the mountain. But Dane is able to, I think, rule the mountain.
Yeah, I think
and
he
they
assumes
bring
the
it
kingship.
back under dwarf control, but they make peace with everybody. Everyone gets paid their dues. They chase the goblins away. Bilbo takes his very sweet time walking back home with Gandalf.
Goes around Mirkwood.
He
this
goes
time.
around Mirkwood, despite being offered passage through Mirkwood by the elves. He's like, I don't think.
Yeah, I
don't
wouldn't
wanna
trust
go
that
back there.
fucking sharp-eared Aryan either.
But he goes with Gandalf back, rides his little pony, goes back through Rivendell, has his 2 little chests of gold and silver, and he's content. He gets home, and they've declared him dead and are selling all of his possessions. And he walks in during the auction, and he's like, no, I'm not dead. And they're like, are you sure? We don't know who you are.
He has to go like through years of
He has to
litigation.
spend years in litigation, but he actually uses most of his gold and silver to buy his own things back.
Yeah.
And it creates an economic boom in Hobbiton because he brings in all this gold and he uses it to buy his own furniture back.
All from
and people,
those dirty Sackfield Bagginses.
I know. They really play up that little rivalry in the movie, which is cute.
Well, in Lord of the Rings, it's brought up a lot more with Lobelia.
In the book, it's quite present, with Lobelia. Because Frodo has problems with her too, I believe. So he comes home, he's writing his memoirs, and he gives them to Frodo. And the idea is The Hobbit was written by Bilbo and given to Frodo to explain his adventures and where the ring came from.
Right.
And so the movie has bookends of the beginning and end are coinciding with the beginning and end of the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, where we see Gandalf and Frodo, and then at the end we see old Bilbo and Frodo, and Gandalf's coming, blah, blah, blah. So
That covers the whole plot.
that is the entirety of the plot of the book. It is in my teeny tiny little book that was printed like a Bible. It was 280 pages, but the book is like 5 by 5 inches. Like it's such a short book. I read it in an afternoon. It is written for children. It is very cute. It is very much, we're on a treasure hunt. We want gold.
We're going to go have an adventure and hit things with swords.
Yeah, and learn things and grow and go on cute little adventures.
Do
and
clever
then come
things that
home.
are impressive, yeah.
Yes. The movie could have been done in max 3 hours. Because they skipped stuff in the book.
And they added other stuff.
And they added 2 movies worth of shit to make it a trilogy, which I don't understand, except for a money grab.
Well, it was just Peter Jackson trying to recapture his fame with the original trilogy, which made sense to make a trilogy out of because it was 3 fucking books.
And it could have been quite a lot longer. They skipped a whole lot in those books, and they kind of squished stuff together to make the plot work because you had to skip quite a lot of big things to make those movies work.
Yeah,
and that was fine because it was already 9 hours with all the extended stuff.
Yeah, there's only so much you can really put into the movies that's just reasonable without it just becoming like just so slow that you don't really give a shit to watch it.
Yes. And in The Hobbit, I feel like this was his attempt at getting a Silmarillion made. And they said, no, you're not going to do a Silmarillion. And he was like, well, I'm going to fit stuff from the Silmarillion in this, by God, and stuff from the indexes of the Return of the King. Because several of the lore in the Hobbit movie was from the index in The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was well above me because I haven't read any of those indexes.
I read them because I was like, oh, this can't be the end. And then it was like just little pieces of lore and stuff that happened. I think you get more of Gollum's backstory in that part. Like, that's where they got him having been previously a Hobbit-like character.
Yeah.
Because that was not in Lord of the Rings, but it was like in these other little bits.
Now, the Silmarillion, I can't really say that I've read the Silmarillion. I've been near the Silmarillion and read
with your
something.
eyes open.
Yeah, my eyes were open looking at words, but I can't really say that I've read it.
And for me, I read that, God, 20 years ago. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it just kind of just glides over me like my brain's covered in butter.
I was an extremely bored teenager, so that was like, it was that or go milk a goat.
Yeah.
So
I had television and video games. That was awesome.
yeah. Let's just rant about the movie.
Yeah,
because
top 10 things that piss you off about the movies.
why did they add a female elf and not give her any real shit to do? Just let her be another character. Why do we have to have a love triangle for a character who's going to die?
Yeah.
It's fine adding female characters. We did not have enough female characters in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. But why would you make it that?
Yeah.
Why would you have that actor hate her? Oh my God. Why would you have Legolas in it? And make him look weird.
Yeah, especially the thing with the guy playing Bard looking more like Orlando
Bard looked more like Orlando Bloom than Legolas did.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
just so
God.
goofy. And I hate what they did with the elves. Like they don't really have like any personality. They're just like just soulless husks in
I
the
think
movie.
that's because Peter Jackson strayed so far from the source material. None of them had a moral center or a purpose.
Yeah,
None
they're kind of just neutral.
Yeah, none of them had a character arc or a reason to exist, and it really comes across.
Yeah.
And the elves were not that physically strong in the books.
Yeah.
They were fast and light and smart and had really great weapons. They were not the Hulk.
I mean, even in The Hobbit, it says that the elves of Mirkwood weren't really suited to like faraway battles and stuff like that. They don't have like any of the infrastructure necessary
they
for
don't
that
even
kind of
have like
war.
that kind of like armor. And in the fucking movie, they're doing like these Roman like marching techniques and jumping over each other and oh my God. The dwarves at least were pretty cool and they were armed for battle and they were coming for battle. The elves were just like, we want our gold in the book. And then in the movie, they're just there to look cool and jump around.
I mean, it's just a CGI army of a bunch of... it's so
At the
dumb.
end, Legolas is like jumping on rocks that are falling, and I'm like, okay, it's
In slow
Mario.
motion.
We're watching Mario.
Yeah. What did you think of the guy who played Dane or Dine, that character? Thorne's cousin.
Oh, Dane.
The Scottish.
I was like, why are all these dwarfs Scottish?
I thought it was funny. I really liked that
It was
character.
fine. It was just the third movie was the worst. You wanted to be here to watch me watch it.
Yeah, because the movies just get progressively further and further away from the source material.
What's so funny is we were there and Rory was watching it and he is 8 and he was like, that's not how that works, Mom. With the ice going through or the swords going through and the ice and all that stuff. And he's like, Mom, that's not how this works. I'm like, I know. None of this was in the book. I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know why we have this. We have to have a showdown with Azog when Thorin was like fighting off like 20 goblins and he gets taken down with like all these people, and we had to have this one-on-one mano-y-mano.
Yeah, and it was so different in the book because they bring up Azog and they're just like, yeah, we've already had a big war with them. We already paid them back for that shit that happened back then.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore. No. We don't give a shit.
I think that Peter Jackson was just struggling really hard to pull anything to make this last longer.
Mm-hmm. It's just so dumb.
It was torture.
Mm-hmm.
I was personally tortured.
It could have been done so much more smoothly. What did you think about the statue scene where they covered Smaug in gold? I got to see you watching that movie. The Desolation of Smaug, and I was just like, oh, she's gonna love that.
God, oh my God. And for a movie called The Desolation of Smaug, he leaves the mountain at the end.
Before he does the desolating.
At the end. And I'm like, how would Thorin know where all this shit is in this mountain when he hasn't been here for 60 years? Mm-hmm. The dragon has destroyed and moved everything.
Everything's covered in gold.
And he expects all these people to know where to go, and he's melting gold to make a statue that they're going to cover the dragon with golden melted gold. And then they're like, oh, it killed him. And I'm like, you know that's not how you kill a dragon. Dragons are hot. You can't kill them with heat. Fucking what? And I was like, I think he wanted the visual of a golden dragon flying across the sky.
I mean, it was a very good visual, though.
It's a cool visual, but it was unnecessary.
Yeah, it did end up being really stupid and pointless.
And it was like literally the conversation with Bilbo in between talking about, because Bilbo knows you never give a dragon your name. And in a lot of these books, you don't give anyone your true name because that gives them power over you.
Right.
That's like a very old magic rule. So he's saying I was barrel rider, I was under hill, then I went over hill, and I went through the mountain, and then under the mountain, and I'm ring bearer.
Not saying any of his connections, because then he knows.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't know any dwarfs. Like, he's, trying to be clever, and he doesn't know how clever dragons are, because dragons are the most clever of all creatures. And the dragon's able to suss out barrel rider. That means he came on a barrel down the river to the lake. That's where men are. And he knows that there's men in the lake nearby. Yeah. And if this guy has food, he must have gotten it somewhere. And so he's in this conversation after he'd stolen that cup. And he's trying to, carefully talk to the dragon and not enrage him and get burnt to a crisp. And the dragon is, figuring out, oh, that's where he is. So that's when he goes to leave. And they had locked up the door behind them, so the dragon's not able to find the door and destroy them. And he's like, well, I'm going to go burn down this lake town and show them. In between these conversations and him tearing up the outside of his own mountain, we insert an hour of movie
with Feely and the elf lady and orcs for some reason attacking Lake Town,
which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that doesn't
at all.
Why are they dead set on just fighting this elf lady? I think is the reason they were attacking Lake Town, because they were just following the elf girl.
They were following Thorin, and Thorin was there.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. Yeah, because that was one of the things that I was very confused about, because I'd only seen the first movie when it was in theaters, and I left crying because it was so bad. And I never watched the second two. So this time watching it, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to stuff them in the barrels and close the tops and then roll them down the... And I'm like, wait, where's the tops? He just dumps them in the river.
I swear
and then they float bottom down in a barrel that's meant to carry apples?
Yeah.
What the hell? And then we have them going down the river in these stupid barrels with fighting and elves are chasing them, and then orcs are chasing them, and then they're fighting the orcs, and they're fighting the elves, and the dwarves are fighting the orcs.
Meanwhile, in the book, they're just floating down a slow-moving river, and elf workers are just guiding them down the river.
They're literally roped together like a little barge, and they're just floating down the river.
Yeah, they just get mildly
Bilbo
uncomfortable.
Is invisible, sitting on a barrel, trying not to die or get fall over. He's trying not to sneeze. And they get to the end, and in the book, he goes and opens up the barrels with dwarves in it. They walk into Lake Town and they get welcomed and given food and a place to stay. And they stay there for like 2 or 3 weeks to recuperate and feel all better.
Yeah, they stay there long enough to become an economic problem because the master's just like,
I can't feed these people anymore.
No one's working because they're so excited about these dwarves being here.
And in the movie, it's like this angst thing and this political thing. And like, we have to hide you. And then we have these random other people who are like, we hate him. Well, we do this. Oh, we have this secret song and this historical thing. And I'm like, this wasn't in the book, and this is so unnecessary.
It wasn't even a song in the movie. It was just like an old like an old poem or something like that.
Right.
And it's more prophecy than song.
And I'm like, this didn't even need to be prophecy in the movie. Because in the book, it's very straightforward. Everyone remembers the dragon 60 years ago flying around. Everyone knows the dwarf left, and it has been said, oh, when the dwarves return, they'll chase away Smaug, and we'll all get a share of the gold. Very logical follow-through, not something you need a prophecy for.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, we lost our riches from long ago. Hey, someday our riches will come back. Very common theme.
Yeah. How did you feel about Bjorn?
He was ugly.
Yeah,
Why
he was
did they make
horrifically
him ugly? He wasn't described as ugly in the book.
No, he was just described as a dark-haired man. Yeah, strong, dark-haired man.
A tall, strong, dark-haired man who danced with bears at night and who was a little gruff.
Yeah. And they turned him into like a hedgehog of a man. What was his hair?
Why did he have random hair sticking out all over his body like that?
Really weird. Really weird.
It was really weird. And meeting him in the book is really cute and funny because Gandalf says to come 2 at a time because if we come all at once, he'll just turn us away. And he starts telling the story of how they were going east. And then he's like, as he tells the story, he goes from me and my companion to me and my friends, and then he calls the other 2, and then
the interruptions are enhancing the storytelling.
They counted us 6, and he's like, "Well, you're 4, you can't be 6." So he calls a couple more, and then as he's telling the story, he's implying that there's more and more people, but they're not in front of him. So Beorn interrupts it, and he gets so interested. He's finally like, "Well, tell them all to come." And one cute, funny thing is, I'm not into fat shaming. Bomber is fat, and it's kind of a funny thing in the whole book.
Bomber is fat, and that's his entire personality.
Yes, but it's to the degree that it's really hilarious because in Mirkwood, he gets bitten, and they have to carry him. And they're like, you're so fat, and we're having to carry the fattest. And then at the end of Beorn, at the end of the story with Beorn, Gandalf's like, Bomber, you come last because you're fat enough for 2. Yeah. and that is like, he's the joke of he's fat, but they don't like him less. They don't love him less. It's just like trying to get him to squeeze
It's a logistical problem is how fat he is.
He's round as he is tall. And it is really funny.
Yeah. Did he get bit by something in Mirkwood? I thought he just fell in the water and that was like the water was enchanted.
Oh, that's how he fell asleep.
Yeah. They got shot at with an arrow. Did someone get hit by the arrow?
No, what happened was they went to shoot the arrow, they went to shoot that stag that was being hunted.
Okay.
And because they shot at it, it brought him bad luck. And he fell into the water and went to sleep.
Okay.
But then later, he got bitten most of all by the spiders because he was fattest. And they were like, oh, he will be the juiciest. So they kept nipping his nose because it stuck out past the end of the web. And so he got tormented the most by the spiders because he was fattest and he was having a dream of eating all these delicious foods. So when he woke up, he was very grouchy and talking about all the beautiful dreams. So Beorn was... In the movie, they did not do him justice. In the movie, they add Radagast the Brown, who becomes a bird poop covered thing.
Yeah. Well,
what is he? He's supposed to be a wizard like Gandalf.
I guess he's just supposed to be like a dirty forest wizard.
In the movie, he comes across very strange.
Now, does the book actually say he's a wizard? Because Gandalf just refers to him as his cousin.
Okay, this is where the Silmarillion comes in. Radagast is named as one of the 5 wizards.
Gotcha.
And because there's Saruman, Gandalf,
the 2
Radagast,
blue wizards.
And then there's the other 2 that I never remember their names because they don't
think anyone knows their name. I don't think they have names.
They do.
I'm sure they do.
I don't know that. I don't remember.
JRR put so much lore into the world. Just
yeah.
no one cares about the two blue wizards because they never come up.
Right. In the Silmarillion, you get the backstory of the wizards. They were lesser gods,
Yeah, the
Maiar,
Maiar.
who gained physical being and came across the waters with the elves. Because the elves were kicked out of the Silver Isle, or whatever it is, when they went to war with each other and had arguments with the gods. It's kind of like, what's the Greek mythology? Olympus? That kind of idea?
Yeah.
And so part of the reason Gandalf and Galadriel are so close is because she came across the water at the same time.
Oh,
she is one of
okay.
the original elves who came across as a young woman elf, and she knew him originally. And she knows who they are. She gained magic at that same time. And she was part of the original 3 rings that were made for the elves.
Right.
She has one of the rings. Gandalf has one of those 3 rings, and I think Elrond has the other one.
I didn't know.
So they each have the 3 elf rings, and Gandalf is special because he's not an elf, but he is one of the great good of their people who had come over during that time of war. And
cut to
a
Radagast
4-foot tall,
covered in bird shit and greasy hair. Not even his own greasy hair,
No.
just greasy hair that he's found and fashioned a jacket
If
into.
you took Jack Sparrow, squished him by 2 feet, and covered him in bird shit, you would have something similar to Radagast.
Yeah.
And he is like terrified because this little hedgehog is dying of poison. And it's like this idea of the sickness coming from Sauron is coming into Mirkwood and killing the animals. I don't know where they got that from, because Mirkwood was being harmed by the spiders that were coming from
Right. Yeah.
Shelob.
Yeah.
But
I just assumed that the little hedgehog got bit by a spider.
no, because he like sucks out this poison air out of its mouth. And I think that they're implying that Sauron's power is growing, and
literally
it's now
leaking into
it's
small
literally
animals.
leaking into this forest and damaging little people. But if a spider bitten him, it would have just eaten him. It didn't make any sense. And here's my other huge gripe.
The rabbits.
Nah, that was fine. I don't care about the rabbits. Why do we spend so much time off fighting Sauron when they had spent all this in the Lord of the Rings? Gandalf spends like years searching through old scrolls to figure out who it is taking over power in the south. And then he comes back and is like, Frodo, what's this ring you have? I need to see it.
Yeah, like it's a big mystery.
Ring. It's a mystery. And here we know who it is. They figure out who it is and they go and fight him. And Galadriel uses her stupid, gross, white, and black powers.
Her horrible witch powers.
To banish Sauron's ghost for another 100 years or whatever it's going to be.
Banishes them to Mordor specifically, I guess, because they were in Gundabad is where that location is.
And in the book of The Hobbit, they briefly mention there's a necromancer in the south.
Yeah.
I think that was meant to have been...
2 sentences.
2 sentences, and that was it.
One at the beginning of the book, one at the end.
Gandalf leaves them at the edge of Mirkwood to go south and find out what's going on. And then he comes back from doing that thing, and those were the 2 sentences. And they needed a reason for Gandalf to be gone, so he couldn't reason with the elves. That was the only reason he left.
Right.
That was the reason we were given. We put in an hour plus of Elrond and Gandalf and all these people fighting evil magic ghost people, and Gandalf getting caught and strung up and fighting orcs.
Yeah.
And it's so stupid.
Honestly, in a world where we've already done the Lord of the Rings and are making The Hobbit, and it would be kind of weird watching that and for Gandalf to just leave and just be gone for most of the movie. That would have been kind of weird, and I think that would have been stranger than if you just hadn't done that. But I feel like it could have definitely been done better. Like, a lot of these changes, I feel like I understand why they did them, but I feel like it could have been done 10 times better if you, like, respected the source material better.
Part of this also changes the nature of wizards because in the books, especially in The Hobbit, it's very clear he is not part of the company.
Yeah.
They had started to think he was, but he has always made it clear he has his own agenda. He was here to provide them a burglar.
Yeah.
He
I got
did
my
his
own shit going on.
job. I have
You
my
do
own
you.
shit going on. I'm getting you as far east as Mirkwood, and I'm done. I'm out of here.
Having a wizard in the party is like hacks. Because you're on a level 10 adventure, I'm a level 20 wizard. I'm not gonna hang out. This is boring to me.
This is getting you where I said I would. I said I would do blah. I did blah. You're on your own, bud.
Bye
You gotta
until
be grown
later.
up. I give you instructions. Do not leave the path. If they'd listened to Thorin, or if they'd listened to Gandalf and ignored all these singing, dancing elves on the edge of the clearing, they would have gotten through fine. They don't listen. Fine.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. But even in the movie, even in the book of The Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, all of the wizards are known to be flaky. Wizards are known to be neutral. They go do what they want when they want. No one is the boss of them.
Right.
And that is a point of contention between the King of Rohan and Gandalf and the steward of Gondor and Gandalf, because everyone, all these kings, think they can tell Gandalf to do something. And he's like, no, you don't tell me what to do. You're not my boss. I do what I go do. And in the books, it's very more clear that they're neutral. They have their own stuff to do. They're concerned about huge political problems. And it's very unusual for them to become involved in the lives of normal people and do normal people stuff.
Yeah.
And that is part of why Bilbo and Frodo are so interesting, because this man who is interested in huge political ramifications of this town versus that town, this king versus that king, he notices this ordinary person and says, you, this person I met 30 years ago, you need to go on this adventure. Because he sees this individual who is normal and unimportant and says, you need to go and help them. You're not special, but you will make things change. And Bilbo not killing Gollum is the linchpin that saved the world at the end of The Lord of the Rings. And that is part of Tolkien's point through this whole series of books, is sometimes the actions of an ordinary man can save the world.
Right.
Peter Jackson says superheroes are what save. And this is why I detest Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I get that. What did you think about Thorin's greed sickness? The way they did it in the book versus the way they did it in the movie.
I was so upset during the movie, and you were laughing at me so much.
Because in the book, it refers to, like, this greediness of gold as, like, poetically as a dragon sickness. Like, it's just kind of a turn of phrase.
Yeah.
It's just Thorin being greedy.
No, it's not even expressed as Thorin being greedy. It is said about the man, the chief of the lake town.
Yeah, the master. He dies of it later.
He dies of dragon greed because he takes a whole boat full of gold and it sinks.
Yeah.
Because it's so heavy, and he dies of it.
Well, in the book, he just takes a bunch of gold and then goes out in the wild and starves to death.
Oh, is that how he died? I knew it was...
Yeah, in the movie, that's how he did it.
Okay, yeah, in the book, he dies of the greed of the dragon gold.
But in the movie, Thorin, like, gets
Becomes
actually
psychotic.
sick.
He starts saying the same things that the dragon says, and it's like a possessive spirit took him
and
over.
he breaks it like a fever. It's weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. I think that shows that Peter Jackson was uncomfortable with the dwarves having faults. They are written as greedy in all of the books. The dwarves in the
most
Lord of the Rings
kinds of media,
are
dwarves
greedy.
are just kind of greedy.
Yeah, they like gold.
Yeah.
They mine gold. They work their entire lives to gather as much gold as possible. They hate spending even a single penny of gold. And that's just part of their characteristic, and it's fine.
Yeah, within
Peter
the setting.
Jackson couldn't handle an elf who would laugh or a dwarf who was greedy.
So, just a silly elf. Can't have a silly elf.
We can't have these characters have either human attributes or be less than perfect. And I think he wanted Thorin to be perfect, but the only way to explain Thorin's actions in the book is to make him sick with something that wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
And in the book, it's very clear. Thorin is greedy.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to give up
He's just
any
being a
gold.
greedy dick.
And even the other dwarves are like, maybe we should share.
Yeah.
And Thorin is just being like, I don't want to. This is mine.
Which, unpopular opinion, I think Thorin was kind of right to be really defensive once they got control of the mountain.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, because, once you allow a bunch of people in to take whatever gold that they're actually owed, if you did that, that just leaves the door open to all the elves who already don't like you and will have already jailed you and have some shit against you. So yeah, I don't blame Thorin, really. I don't trust that Elven King either.
He was really odd compared to the book. I don't...
Yeah, I feel like there was some sensibility to it in the book, but in the movie, he's just psychotically raving. He's like, no one can touch my gold. Which is a little bit like that in the book, too, but...
Yeah, it's definitely a different level. And expressed differently. And I kind of felt it was the same way as they only let 9 or 10 of the dwarves look like dwarves. And then Philly, Killy, and Thorin had to look like men.
Yeah, they had to be hot.
They still gave them prosthetics, but they had to be hot. They couldn't have bulbous noses. They couldn't have big foreheads. They couldn't have huge beards.
They couldn't look like Gimli.
And Gimli looked like a dwarf.
Yeah.
And Bomber and Biff
and everybody loved that.
Yeah, these other dwarves looked like dwarves. And I'm like, why did they make this choice with the prosthetics? Why can't Thorin just look like a dwarf? And I felt like Peter Jackson had a thing for Thorin and wanted him to be pretty and special and not dwarf-like.
Yeah.
Like, he wanted a man.
He's rejecting dwarfness.
It's like he wanted Aragorn to be back. Like, he wanted Aragorn and he had Thorin. And he was trying to make him into Aragorn. Because Aragorn was perfect king. He never had a fault. He didn't do anything wrong. And it's kind of, he's like a stereotypical idealized king.
Yeah.
And I think that was what he was wanting. Because even as we were watching it, the whole thing with the lady elf healing Killy and the white flash and the king's
it's like shot for shot
Arwen healing Frodo. And it was like, why are... And that was the other big point. This was not meant to be a prequel. This was meant to be a sequel that was made of before.
Yeah, this is like episode 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars. Yeah.
Because my son, we have this shining Galadriel moment, and he doesn't know who Galadriel is.
Yeah,
he
it means
care.
nothing to him.
It means nothing to him. Oh, we see Elrond. Rory doesn't know
who.
and I think that is a serious error on Peter Jackson's part of we're not building up these characters organically.
Yeah.
We're not introducing them
We're
organically.
piggybacking off of Lord of the Rings.
We are expecting you to have known and loved The Lord of the Rings and then watch The Hobbit. And I think that is going to be a detriment to younger audiences who are watching them in what they think is order. Yeah. If you watch the first Star Wars movie, like number 1, there's going to be a lot of stuff you don't understand if you haven't seen 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
They're expecting you to have seen and loved 4, 5, 6. And then go back and watch 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
and then watch 7, 8, 9.
Which would be really bizarre because you have to learn about midichlorians in episode 1, and then it just never comes up again after that.
Whereas it was answering a question people had from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
From how does Luke have to have his powers? And so we need to shoehorn this in to explain things.
Very much the same here because it's trying to answer questions about like Frodo's or Bilbo's motives and Gandalf's motives and
Gollum's
stuff like
background.
that.
And even, I think they were trying to build up Legolas's backstory, which is
why?
unnecessary.
Yeah.
He was
already
a complete
cool.
fine character in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And the fact that he and Gimli don't get along and then become friends.
Yeah, the best part about Legolas in the other movies was him and Gimli being antagonistic toward each other and then eventually becoming friends.
Antagonistic of, well, I got 42, 43. You know, like
and
that is the whole joke and enjoyment, and it's an organic relationship. And now we're like, well, we need to see Legolas before he ever met a good dwarf.
Yeah. And just, they had to attach Legolas to Aragorn at the very end of the movie, because I think there's like an implication in Lord of the Rings that Aragorn already knew Legolas prior.
Well, I mean, he was already engaged to Arwen. Aragorn was engaged to Arwen. He knew elves.
Right, but that was a different house, though.
Yeah, that was the house of Elrond and Rivendell.
Yeah.
But he already knew, like, I don't think he was friends with, like, Galadriel or the Mirkwood elves, but he knew these people. He was related to them. They were distant cousins.
But I think it's like there's an implied bigger relationship in the movies between Aragorn and Legolas that just isn't really there otherwise.
Maybe,
until
I don't
the
know.
events of Lord of the Rings. And at the end of the movie, Legolas's dad is just like, oh yeah, by the way, nothing to do with what we're doing here. Also, I'm still sad about my daughter dying, or adopted daughter. What was that? I can't even remember.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Hey, go visit this ranger in near Mordor. He's cool. All right, bye forever.
Which doesn't make any sense, because when we meet Strider, he is on his own.
Yeah.
And he had worked with the Rangers, and they were kind of like this small, very, very small, select kind of army who would go and fight, like,
Guerrilla tactics
against
orcs
like
and...
orcs and other monsters. They're kind of like a little group of monster fighters.
Yeah.
And nobody knew he was Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Everyone knew him as Strider.
Rangers with a lot of power, one could say.
Oh my God. I hate you.
Do you think there's like 7 of them, or one of the generations with 3?
I like the pink one.
One weird thing that's always bothered me about the evolution of goblin to orc, because in this one, goblins and orcs are the same creature. The orcs are just the bigger ones. But then eventually, Tolkien like changed the lore of that, didn't he?
I think so, because like over the years, readers would write in and say, well, you said this elvish word was for cow, but in this other book you used this word to mean like tree. How do you fix that? And he would have to do 5-page long replies explaining the etymology.
Which
of
is
how
really
these
cool that
words
he did that. I
changed
love that he did that.
to try to make it work. But this also is one of those like... And actually, at the very beginning of the Hobbit book, it said that this is the updated version to make it align with the Lord of the Rings, because early versions of the Hobbit were less likely to match up with stuff about the ring and about Gandalf. He evolved his own lore over the decades and decades he was writing, and his own stories about them changed. And that's one of the things. Goblins are a child book story monster.
Right.
Orcs were his dark lore, big background history thing, and he just changed the name and what they were. Yeah. And then Uruk-hai were the bastardized half-orc, half-man monstrosity created by Saruman.
Yeah. Because I think the original lore was, it was the orcs raping human women, I think.
Well, orcs were elves that were tortured and created into a new race.
Right.
And then Uruk-hai were a combination of men and orcs.
Okay. And then later it got changed again to what they did in the movie, which is they just made them out of mud.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is more kid-friendly. I've proven that way, I guess.
I guess. I don't know.
Which, it's really murky as to whether the orcs fuck in this universe. Because Azog has a son, so clearly he does. But then in Lord of the Rings, they concoct them out of like dirt wombs or something, out of the earth.
Well, and that's where we were talking about the difference between, like, in The Hobbit, the goblins have political intrigue and towns and mining and things that they grow and build and make, and it's low quality and gross because they're them, and they're not
they're
us.
just nasty.
They're nasty. But in movies, it becomes more, they're just monsters over there, and they are there for us to fight.
Yeah.
It's much more like a video game where you just have to spawn 10 enemy to go shoot at.
Yeah,
and
it's just
gain
cannon fodder.
points.
They don't matter.
Yeah, and
we don't want to spend too much time giving them like lore and backstory right before we cut off their heads.
And you know what made me yell, and you weren't here to see it?
Yeah.
Those fucking worms that dig through the mountain and then disappear. What was that? Those don't exist in the Lord of the Rings anywhere that I know of. Oh my god, what are we doing?
I think that was a Palaka worm from Magic the Gathering.
That's what it looked like. And then these giant orc things that are not trolls because they're out in the sunlight, but they're like 2 stories tall and have heads the size of boulders. What are they doing?
Yeah.
What is this?
Well, and I have an explanation. It's just not a good one because it's from one of the video games. That was like another side project to Saruman's while he was doing the Uruk-hai and developing them. He also happened to develop a breed of trolls that could be out in the sunlight. That was it.
Huh.
Yep.
I mean, that could be in the books. I don't remember.
I don't think it is. I think that's a after the fact assertion from just an add-in to the game to just fill out the lore a little bit more. I think that's all that is.
When we were watching, you were right about it was Gandalf who tricked the trolls to stay out until the sunshine.
Yeah.
But in the book, he did it by
Imitating the voices.
imitating the voices of the other trolls and making them argue with each other until the sunlight came up.
That was really good. But I will defend the movie in what they did. They gave Bilbo a little bit more agency and something to do more in the movie. Because, he was actually keeping the trolls busy and, like, talking to them and distracting them instead of letting Gandalf do it. Because anytime Gandalf gets into a situation, he's the solution. Because he's the big, powerful wizard.
Yeah, so the plot of the movie is just, it's the same as the book, but with a lot more random shit thrown in. Love triangle between the elf lady and Killy the dwarf, which, we're breaking all these rules, loving across these races who hate each other, which isn't even canon that dwarves and elves hate each other. They just dislike each other. It's not like, and also we pick Killy because he's gonna die anyway.
Yeah,
so there's
it
no
doesn't matter
stakes
anyway.
at all, anyhow. And we add Legolas, we add Elrond. Well, Elrond is in the book, but we add Galadriel and all these other characters who we know of from the Lord of the Rings. We add Saruman and we add all these fights with these other things. It's just to make it last. And he probably would have done a 5-movie series if he could have.
Sure.
He's tried to stretch it out so far. And it's like, man, you're already a millionaire. Come on.
Yeah, why are you doing that? Like, pass this off to someone else. Let someone else have a go.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Amazon Lord of the Rings stuff, so I don't know if it's good or not. Like, I don't care about black elves, black dwarves. None of that stuff bothers me.
Depends on how you feel about Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
Well, I never read any of the books. I watched
just
a
the show. Depends on how you feel about the show.
I watched the first 4 or 5 seasons and it was fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't into it.
It's pretty much just more of that.
But it's Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
A lot of sex?
I think
Wait,
so.
really?
I think maybe. I could be wrong about that. I can't remember. I only watched like part of the first season because I got ruined on who the what you think is a wizard that's hanging out with hobbits. Because that's what I found more interesting than all the political intrigue, because there's a lot of that and like more race war stuff.
Is it set after the Lord of the Rings or before?
No, it's before. It's before The Hobbit. It's like...
Is it from the Silmarillion?
It's got a lot of Silmarillion elements to it. Like, there is... who's the King Durin of Durin's Day fame? It's during his time.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the, like, bigger lore stuff, like, a lot of the history, they try to, like, shove in to the show. And some parts they do well, other parts they don't. The only part that I really found interesting interesting was the proto-hobbits, because they don't like live in a little village or anything like that in Bag End or the Shire. They are actually nomadic.
Oh, interesting.
And that's kind of cool. They like live in grasslands and they're just constantly traveling, and they have to like hide and stuff, you know, actually using their hobbit qualities
Right.
of sneakiness. And they come across a wizard, or what you think is a wizard, and it's kind of implying that it's Gandalf, but it's not. It's actually Sauron.
Wait, what?
Yeah. No, this is like, it's really confusing because Sauron was an elf, right? Originally. I know in a lot of stuff he's presented as an elf, but this is just like an old man.
Sauron was the servant to Morgoth. I don't know if he was an elf.
I don't know either. Yeah, it doesn't really matter because I don't really like the show anyway.
So is Morgoth in that? Because this would be way thousands of years before.
Yeah, I think
Lord of the Rings happened.
I think he is in it because they're chasing down like this is like when Galadriel is like really young, and she's
Okay.
like chasing
So-
down Morgoth to try to kill him.
Just after they came across the sea?
It was sometime after that because she's pretty much spent her entire time at war, and it's about to go through another cycle, and she's supposed to go back to the Isles, but she decides to
Interesting.
skip that and just stay for another cycle on the continent, and I don't,
'Cause
start
see,
more wars. I don't know.
There are stories in the Silmarillion that could make really cool TV.
It's interesting. I
don't
think
know.
I think The Hobbit is, or I think the show is better than The Hobbit, so you might enjoy
Okay.
it.
If I have time, I might look at that.
Yeah, but I think we've covered The
Yeah, I'm
Hobbit
starting
enough.
to cough. That was the movie. I would give a C-. It was too long. I love Martin Freeman playing Bilbo.
He's really good.
Adorable.
Ian
He is
McKellen,
so
we
cute.
love to
Ian
see him.
McKellen was fantastic. I love him and everything. I hate Peter Jackson.
Yeah,
I have since I saw
Peter
Return of
Jackson
the
personally
King.
gets an F.
He just, I don't know. Other people think he's a genius and a master of storytelling, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I thought his King Kong movie was pretty good, but a lot of his other stuff, I don't like it.
Yeah. I think the Hobbit movies are like B- material. Like if you shove enough money into something, it's gonna be better than what it would have been without it. So I guess there's something to say about that. But I think that'll do it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Jay, for producing. Thank you, Bugs, for torturing yourself by watching these movies.
I honestly never thought I would watch all 3 Hobbit movies. So I did something for you because I love you. And please let us know your thoughts on the Hobbit book and movie. And if you disagree and think they were the best, we'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, we'll fight you in the comments.
No.
I
we
will
will
fight. I'll fight
respectfully disagree. All right. Thank you so much for being a patron, and we will see you next time.
Bye.